Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
As we head into Memorial Day weekend, a time to remember those who died while serving our country. Families of fallen Camp Pendleton Marines are filing suit. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. Families of 4 of the 5 Marines killed in a 2022 Osprey crash say the aircraft is defective and dangerous. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer has more on the legal action.
The lawsuit filed in federal court in San Diego names 3 contractors involved in the V-22 Osprey: Rolls-Royce, Bell, and Boeing. Ari Friedman is one of the attorneys that filed the suit. He says more than anything, the families are looking for answers.
They want this aircraft to be made safer so that these types of things don't happen and future Marines and their families don't have to go through what they went through.
A Marine Corps investigation found a long-time mechanical problem that has plagued the Osprey called a hard clutch engagement caused the 2022 crash of the Camp Pendleton-based aircraft in Imperial County. All Ospreys in the military were grounded in December after 8 Air Force airmen were killed in a crash off Japan. That crash is still under investigation. The military began flying the Ospreys again in March after what it said were maintenance and procedural fixes. Friedman says that's not good enough.
What we've seen coming out of the manufacturers is that their response to all these crashes is to develop workarounds. But in the back of my mind, I'm still lingering on this question of why are these crashes happening? And nobody has the answer for that yet.
Since March 2022, 4 Osprey crashes have killed 20 U.S. service members. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
San Diego County is asking state and federal officials to investigate health issues linked to cross-border sewage. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas says several beaches remain closed heading into the Memorial Day weekend.
The county has issued closures in Coronado, the Silver Strand, and Imperial Beach, saying bacteria levels there exceed health standards. County leaders are asking the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the California Department of Public Health to investigate health issues linked to cross-border sewage pollution.
We want additional and more robust intervention, both from our state and from the federal government, because this is a crisis like no other.
Imperial Beach Mayor Paloma Aguirre created a task force to monitor public health impacts. They plan to survey South Bay residents about symptoms that don't send them to the hospital and are less likely to show up in county data.
We know that people are becoming ill by bacteria and pathogens that are not on those lists, 1. 2, not everybody can afford health coverage. 3, not everybody feels that their symptoms are serious enough to being hospitalized or going to the emergency room.
San Diego State professor Paula Stigler-Granados is on the task force. She says more complete data can help prove the need for more attention and funding.
The science can support the advocacy work, and so that's the evidence that we need to be able to present to the policymakers and the people that hold the funds to say, hey, this is a real problem. These are some of the evidence that we have. It's not just people's stories, but we've got data to back it up.
Last month, the Port of San Diego joined the county, the City of San Diego, and the City of Imperial Beach in declaring a local emergency related to the pollution. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
There's a breezy one out there. The winds of change are blowing as we begin this new holiday weekend. We're going to be turning much cooler out there overnight tonight and into especially Saturday. You can see strong winds to get down to around 44 into Mount Laguna, 58 for your low in Borrego Springs. We'll stay in the low 60s, if not the upper 50s, closer to the coastline. Wind advisory is going to be expiring at 2 a.m., so the winds will begin to die down, but we're going to talk about what goes on the other side of this breezy evening with our full forecast coming up.
A Fallbrook elementary school is honoring its history through books and a new reading center. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne shows us how they're keeping storytelling alive.
It's almost the end of the school year, but for La Paloma Elementary School students, it's the start of something new. With songs, dances, gifts, and a blessing, local Native American tribal members celebrated the opening of a new reading center at the school's library.
It's an honor for me, and it's an honor because of our culture, our tribe, and the Apache tribe, the people that I represent, and most importantly, I was called to do this.
Angel Sanchez Reyes is the chief of the Ende Apache tribe. He says he enjoys sharing his stories and history and hopes it's something that doesn't get lost.
You ask any Native American about their history, they'll be more than glad to tell you. It's just we're not asked often enough, and yeah, we would love to share that.
And what better way than a library to teach the kids? I mean, the kids growing up need to start learning their culture. They need to know, everything that's involved in their background, so that when they grow up, they can be as proud as we are.
Reagan Pato, the school's librarian, wanted to create a space that would keep history alive. She discovered the school was built on an ancient burial ground and wanted to give a little piece back.
There's a lot of history right here underneath this La Paloma, this ground. We have several tribes surrounding us, so I knew once I made those connections that it was going to become, at least, that it was going to be a powerful thing to be able to open a beautiful room and remind children that this is where we're at and this is what needs to happen, and to remind us of how we can be better.
A dark and plain corner got filled with colorful murals and books. And she hopes it's a space where students not only learn about Native American history, but all histories.
I mean, this is really what it's about. Every one of those elders talked about the portals, the books. How can we, find ourselves in the books? What can we find about each other in the past?
Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Nearly 80 years ago, a black Coronado resident drowned in the San Diego Bay. He recently became the third Californian on the National Registry of Racial Terror lynchings. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson looked into his life and death.
Around 8 p.m. on Saturday, April 27, 1946, Alton Collier boarded the Coronado ferry to San Diego. He never reached the other side. His body washed up on the Coronado shore a week later. What happened to Collier depended on which newspaper you read. White-run papers didn't use the word man in their headlines about Collier, but Negro, suspect, and knife assailant. In their accounts, Collier, 26, got in a heated argument with two 19-year-old Navy men, Freddie Johnson and Otis Gilbert. Then Collier drew a knife and slashed Johnson's arm. So Gilbert confronted Collier with boat hooks, and Collier leaped over the railing into the bay. Ferry crew dropped a life raft, then kept going, even though Collier screamed for help after he hit the water. This detail bothered Coronado historian Kevin Ashley.
Why would a guy jump into the water and drown if he knew how to swim? If he didn't know how to swim, why would you jump in the water? Something didn't add up about it.
So Ashley searched black-run newspapers and found a very different headline: Drowned man victim of gang-up attack by white Navy men. In this account, witnesses saw sailors calling Collier the N-word, crowding him toward the railing, striking him with a boat hook, and Collier falling overboard.
The white press basically fed what I believe was a prevailing narrative of African American men as aggressive, and the black press portrayed him as a victim.
In the months leading up to Collier's death, race relations were boiling in San Diego. African Americans were picketing businesses that wouldn't hire them. So Collier's story didn't surprise Ashley. He believes the ferry's Navy passengers closed rank.
They basically agreed what was the story. Then, one of the guys had a so-called slash, which at first was portrayed in the press as he lost so much blood, and later on it was It was just a sort of a scratch.
The coroner declared Collier's death a suicide. Collier's wife, Georgia, sued the ferry company.
So imagine this 23-year-old, 24-year-old African-American woman with a primary school education taking on the Spreckles Company.
Her deposition paints a different picture of Collier, a cement worker and union man at the Hotel del Coronado. He never drank, had asthma, wore glasses, and importantly,
he didn't own a knife. He didn't own a razor.
Georgia Collier told the lawyer, quote, he had no temper whatsoever. That Saturday, he got off work before noon, helped her with the dishes and cooking, planted flowers, then boarded the ferry to pick up tailored trousers for himself and a coat for Georgia at a downtown department store. They were supposed to go dancing that night, but he never came back. His glasses were later found on the ferry deck, broken.
She maintained he was murdered, but she never got her day in court. So, and eventually the case was dropped.
Georgia Collier never saw a dime. A week later, the ferry company sold for $5.5 million. The sailors were never charged. Ashley's research prompted the Equal Justice Initiative to declare Collier's death a lynching. SDSU anthropology professor Seth Malios says San Diego could lead a national reckoning with the broader definition of lynchings.
You immediately think of these images from the Deep South, and you think of hangings. We immediately link it, but that's not what this is. Lynching is about people taking the law into their own hands. There being no representation and terrorizing an individual.
Yvette Porter Moore is a San Diego genealogist. She wants accountability.
I would like to see the County of San Diego change his death certificate.
On the anniversary of Collier's death last year, around 8 p.m., Moore and Ashley boarded the Coronado ferry.
I just wanted somehow to say, like, I know what happened to you. Maybe nobody else knows, but I know.
Collier didn't get to see the flowers he planted that day bloom. On the waves he was left to drown in, Moore and Ashley sprinkled fresh petals.
Say his name, Alton Collier.
A public ceremony will be held this summer. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
This Memorial Day, many Americans will visit a national cemetery to pay their respects. As Karen Kafer reports, volunteers are working to recognize service members who've been overlooked for too long.
On a blustery spring Saturday in York, Pennsylvania, the Civil War service of John Noble is finally memorialized.
Present arms.
Noble was born in Havana, Cuba around 1832. He fought for the Union Army from 1862 to 1863, and in 1902, he was buried in North York's Lebanon Cemetery. Until the 1960s, one of the only burial sites in the area for African Americans.
I didn't realize that this was a black cemetery. It was just a place where my relatives were buried. And so it's only been since 2019 when I started volunteering here that I knew and understood the gravity of what this site meant.
Samantha Dorm is co-founder of a volunteer group called Friends of Lebanon Cemetery. When the group first came together in 2019, the primary mission was upkeep. Now the focus has expanded to research, storytelling, education, and remembrance.
The truth of the matter is, many of those stories are not there to be found. If you don't have families who can tell you about their ancestors, that can tell you about their history, their lineage, those stories are oftentimes lost.
The more than 150-year-old cemetery, Dorm says, is the final resting place of at least 300 U.S. military veterans. This spring, Noble and 4 other black veterans received the grave markers to which every eligible U.S. military veteran is entitled, whether buried in a cemetery maintained by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs like this one in Alexandria, Virginia, or a private cemetery like Lebanon.
Every veteran has a story to be told, and so without that marker, that story is lost, and the legacy of that veteran is lost.
Matthew Quinn is the VA's outgoing Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. He says efforts like that by the Friends of Lebanon Cemetery and at other private sites is an extension of the recognition at the nation's VA-operated cemeteries.
This is reaching out beyond those boundaries to private cemeteries that maybe the graves haven't been maintained and the markers have been damaged or destroyed.
The VA's National Cemetery Administration says they are working with private historically black cemeteries in South Carolina, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, and others, and local veterans groups, historians, and volunteers like Samantha Dorm to verify service records and issue markers, making sure every veteran's service is honored. In Alexandria, Virginia, I'm Karen Kafa.
Americans are traveling in record numbers this holiday weekend. As Michael Yoshida reports, the weather could cause delays.
Hitting the road this holiday weekend. AAA predicting more than 38 million people will be traveling by car, a number that's up 4% from 2023.
The busiest Memorial Day weekend for road travelers, for road trips, in 25 years.
Airports seeing a spike in travelers too. The TSA saying Thursday was the second busiest day at U.S. airports ever, with just under 2.9 million screened passengers. Only the Sunday after last year's Thanksgiving has seen more travelers.
A lot of people who maybe didn't travel pre-pandemic are traveling now. So keep that in mind. People, when they travel these long holiday weekends, oftentimes they're not like the business traveler that sort of like moves quickly during, through security. So just keep that in mind and give yourself just extra time.
A busy Memorial Day weekend that could be impacted by severe weather. Across the central and eastern parts of the U.S., storms are happening Friday and expected to continue into the weekend, with threats of large hail, damaging winds, and possibly a few tornadoes. Parts of the South also expecting extreme heat, with temps in the triple digits. Travelers bracing for whatever the weather or crowds may bring.
The TSA line was crazy, so highly recommend digital ID. It was a breeze. Even pre-check and clear was full of people.
Not bad. I'm used to it though. I'm used to the traffic. When you're traveling during, a holiday season or so, there's some things to expect.
Michael Yoshida, KPBS News.
It's expected to be busy at our beaches. San Diego lifeguards want to remind everyone of important safety guidelines. They say the safest spot to swim is in front of lifeguard towers. It's also important for swimmers to be mindful of rip currents.
We just had a full moon, so that causes some extreme high and low tides. So your tides are going to change every 6 hours, so be mindful of the tides. When the tides are going lower, you'll always have the rip currents pulling stronger. The swell is going to be mostly out of the south, from anywhere from waist to chest high over the next 4 days.
If you plan on enjoying Memorial Day on a boat, lifeguards say keep your distance and drivers stay sober. The bay will be crowded and the laws for drinking and driving are the same for boating. The city of San Diego is expanding free swimming lessons in lower-income neighborhoods. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson visited a class to learn why.
On a Thursday, students leave class at Rosa Parks Elementary to face their fears at the City Heights pool.
Before the lessons, I could only stand the water. If it was too deep, I'd just sink. Hardest part is always when the teacher eventually needs to let you go so you can learn these things by yourself. It's always I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm gonna fall in the water or something. Like the deep end, yeah, it's always a bit nervous to do it.
Now he can front float, back float, and pancake. Life-saving skills. Aquatic supervisor Cynthia Carranza says many children in this program have never been to the beach or even a pool.
Swimming lessons should not be perceived as something that's a privilege. It should be perceived as something that is a necessity, and everyone should have a right to have access to it.
Nice job. Excellent, excellent.
According to the CDC, only about a quarter of Latino adults have had swimming lessons, and drowning deaths significantly increased after COVID, maybe because pools closed. These lessons could be saving lives of children like Andrea Hernandez.
I feel great. I feel like I'm good at swimming now. Yeah.
She has advice for other kids new to swimming.
To try their best, to not be scared, and to not be nervous.
Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Well, the winds of change are blowing, and it's going to be very breezy through the evening. There are wind advisories for some of the mountains and the passes off to our east. Turning sharply cooler Saturday, but eventually we're going to see the heat rebound and return, especially for the inland deserts by Memorial Day afternoon. So again, in the short term until just 2 a.m., a wind advisory remains in effect for some of the high ground off to the east and in far inland parts of San Diego County and off to the east. But overall tonight, low clouds near the coast, 61, a little breezy for some of us. And on Saturday, we're going to be dealing with a more pleasant but cooler day, cooler and dry. And you're going to notice a big change. This is a strong cold front for this time of the year. Even though it may be moisture starved for us, it is leaving its mark in cooling us down. And you can see these low clouds near the coast will stay in the mid-60s for highs in San Diego, but you'll notice a big change for the interior. Only 85 for your high in Borrego Springs, 55 up into Mount Laguna. So much cooler. The hot spots not as hot on Saturday. Sunday, nice, pleasant weather for us. High pressure begins to build across the southwest and the Four Corners region, and that's just beginning the process of a recovery from this recent front. So you can see for the coastal areas, a lot of clouds Saturday, even persistent into much of the afternoon. And then we get into more of a typical rhythm of morning clouds, brighter afternoon skies into the end of the weekend and through Memorial Day Monday. Highs will be around 69, then staying in the upper 60s. So the temperatures will not change a whole lot for the coast. They will drop a bit for overnight lows. You'll notice the change there come Sunday night. But for the inland areas, here's where you do notice a cool down. 67 your high on Saturday for the inland. That is running cool. A lot of clouds, though, even making their way and holding on for much of the afternoon. Almost up to the mountains, so across much of the inland area. We'll be bouncing back into the mid-70s and even upper 70s by Wednesday, which will be about an 11-degree jump from that cool Saturday to the middle of next week. Into the mountains we go here. Very breezy this evening, still breezy this Saturday and Sunday. Mostly sunny and a little cool for a couple of days, especially Saturday. Only 55, but we will bounce back into the low 70s, about an 18-degree jump here from Saturday to a warmer Wednesday. And into the deserts here, you notice a big cool down Saturday. It does not last long. Back to 94 Sunday. Memorial Day, mostly sunny and comfortable. It's all relative. Back up to 100 degrees Tuesday and Wednesday. So we do hope that you have a very happy and safe start to the weekend. But we do remember those who have made the big sacrifice here on Memorial Day weekend as well. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
A play about self-liberation, black culture, and queer identity is coming to the Old Globe this weekend. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says Fat Ham reimagines a timeless Shakespeare tale.
For the first time ever at the Old Globe, the Broadway production of Fat Ham is taking the stage.
Oh shoot! The lights! Huh?
Sadiq Hurd is director of the show.
The play is set in North Carolina, so it's set in the South. And so what we see are the traditions and customs similar to being in a black church, right? We have a big family prayer that we all can recognize.
He says the 2022 Pulitzer-winning, Tony-nominated play is a fresh and funny take on Shakespeare's Hamlet. Fat Ham was written by James Imes.
So it's still a life and death show. However, when you do it at a barbecue and you add in some karaoke, it just becomes a really good time. But it's definitely more comedy than drama.
The story is set at a Southern family cookout and includes ghosts and demands of revenge for murder. Felicia Boswell plays Tidra in the show.
She's a firecracker. She has a lot of heart. She has a lot of spirit. She's fun. She's gonna be a comic relief for you. She's crazy about the men in her life, her baby, her husband.
Tian Richards plays Larry, a Marine who's returning home and slowly changing his old beliefs.
You get a full arc with Larry. He comes in one way and ends totally different. It's a full 180, and just to get to play that range and gamut is, any actor's dream. And it's a true gift from the writer, James Imes, to just be able to come in with how people perceive a man to be and then explore all the facets of what a man can be.
Hurd says that the story focuses on black and queer identity, something not usually shown on a stage this big.
We have Juicy, who's coming into his queerness, Opal, who's coming into their queerness, Larry, who is discovering their queerness. And so we have these characters who are trying to figure out their identity. And along that journey, we end up pulling in an audience.
Richard says Larry is the silent type, who's battling the psychological effects of warfare. He says his character shows that black queerness and queerness in general can look many ways.
Larry does embody these deep elements of the wounded masculine and like performative masculinity, and then we get to see that cocoon crack, and we get to see this beautiful unfolding of what he becomes by the end.
Boswell is originally from Alabama. She says the story's honest and shows real people from the South. The actress drew inspiration for her role from the women and family who raised her.
We don't hear stories written about women like this or families like this, and this is real life. I grew up going to my grandmother's house with my family. Everybody was playing cards, the drinkers were drinking, the smokers were smoking, and I grew up around that sort of energy.
The play is full of joy, and Hurd says it's a great conversation starter. For him, Fat Ham has an even deeper meaning.
I love this play because this play actually helped to liberate me and in my queer journey, and in my, it helped me usher into this field of directing as well. And so it really feels amazing being here in San Diego. It's so beautiful, and I really hope the play can find a community of people who are searching and are in need of that liberation.
The story's message is about having a true sense of freedom. So Hurd says it's a show for people from all walks of life. It explores the conflict between what you owe your family and what you owe yourself.
Whether it's the tidbits of Hamlet that James has written into the script, whether it's just the narrative of this black family in the South struggling to figure out how to work together, love each other, heal from their trauma, or whether it's just you want to come to the theater and party and have a good time, we have all of those elements.
Performances run May 25th to June 23rd, with the official opening night on May 30th at the Old Globe. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm John Carroll, and as we all enjoy this 3-day weekend, let us keep a thought for those who paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Goodbye, everybody.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Previs Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.